I wanted to just say hello to the LA folks. I'm also in Tongvaland, kind of like up in the UCLA Westwood area. I've been in LA. This will be my 4th year in August. And Reverend Lien was absolutely correct in that she was my first co-teacher, person that I co-taught with at the EBMC sangha. And that was part of my curriculum in completing the community Dharma leader training program. And so I'll just tell you real quick, my pursuit of Dharma teacher status was really an outgrowth of all of the generosity that I received at EBMC. So I came and I didn't know anything about practice 10 years ago. EBMC gave me the space to learn about this practice, to be introduced to the Dharma. Coming from a Black Baptist background into this Dharma thing, I was really looking for tools that could help me to see what Thich Nhat Hanh and Jesus would say is the kingdom of God within. And that was the only reason that I came into the practice of meditation, because I felt it would give me the tools to conduct introspective observations. And it's done so much more than that. It's done so much more. But my motivation to go into Dharma leadership was initially only so that I could go back to EBMC and render service to EBMC, because it opened up so many doors of possibilities for me. And so much more than that has happened as well. But it's just good to have a nice, honest little seed of intention. Not even like 500 seeds, but just one. And I'm a witness that if you can find that one thing that seems almost impossible, it can really grow. So today, I'm teaching. I just recently, on Christmas Eve of 2021, I relinquished the role of the core teacher of the Inside LA BIPOC Sangha. Kaizen has frequented that Sangha for quite a while when we were in service there. And that Sangha is still active, but I just felt the need to pull back and to kind of reclaim reclaim some energy and a focus so that I can see what else is possible. So there's, I'm kind of in a renunciation mode right now, where I don't really need to be visible or anything like that. I'm trying to hide, actually. Not that everybody's looking for me. I'm not in super high demand, but, I'm just trying to germinate some new ideas. And with that said, I would like to, first of all, just maybe throw out a little quiz. And feel free to respond by unmuting yourself to see if you can offer something to this question. So what is it that has the effect of relaxing our breathing, slowing down our heart, lowering our blood pressure? What is it that can relax our breathing, lower our heart rate, and our blood pressure levels, or tension or anxiety, if you will, if you want to add those to it? What is that thing? What is that orientation that does that? Anybody, you could just jump in and unmute yourself. I don't do decorum very well, so we could just.
Is it meditation?
Yes and no. Aside from meditation, oh yeah, there we go. Aside from meditation, what is it that can lower our heart rate, lower blood pressure, and bring relaxation to our breathing or relieve tension and stress? Aside from meditation.
Chocolate.
It depends on how much you have.
Yeah. A long bike ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deep breathing.
You're going to be surprised at what this
Slow.
answer is. And continue. Yeah, I'll take about 2 or 3 more.
Slow breathing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being in the present.
Singing.
Being in the present doesn't always do it because you could be stressed in the present. Right? Am I right?
Yes.
I'm present to losing my mind. How about that?
Doing it, Thomas? Are you doing it right now?
Kind of, sort of. So the answer to that question, surprisingly, is the American art form known as the blues. The blues, hearing the vibration and the story that accompany those vibrations and tones, it is said, triggers the hypothalamus, which in turn relaxes our breathing, which in turn slows down our heart rate, and which in turn can lower our blood pressure levels. I'm talking about the music form called the blues. This is what what some scientific studies have shown is the effect of exposing ourselves to that particular art form. Am I a blues aficionado? Not by any means. I'm more of a jazz person. But the blues is one of the ways that we are able to reconcile our direct living experience. Now, I'm a student of life. I'm a student of the Dharma, which I think are synonymous. But in my exploration, and by the way, Reverend Lien, I've been in the Dharma 10 years as of last month. I haven't been around very long, but I've been paying attention. I've been paying attention, and what I'm finding is that I've been exposed through observation and direct living experience to a whole nother realm of people that offer insight and understanding in mindfulness, in my mindfulness practice, that are more relegated to the arts of jazz and blues and so forth. And so I've been listening and paying attention, not so much to the rhythm and the nature and the excitement of it, but more so the ethical qualities and understanding and gleaning from them. What kind of posture can we hold with life wherein we can be able to alchemize our experiences and to find a pathway or mode of expression that is authentic to us in whatsoever your orientation is? This is what I observe from the classic masters of the American tradition known as jazz. But today we're talking about blues, which is very similar. So there's an author who is named Ralph Ellison, and let me back up one moment before I go there. What I have observed the past, I'd say 3 years, and even beyond the 3 years, but specifically during our time of being in pandemic, that is, this is an experience, because we're still in that experience, that has shifted life drastically. It's caused people to leave the planet. It's caused people to change the way that they move about on the planet. And it's changed the nature of our relationships on the social level with our families, our friends, so forth. And you know this so well. But because of the sense of uncertainty that the pandemic introduced to all of our lives, it's been my observation that the uncertainty has been so vast and so persistent that it has immersed us into a mental state of something that I would call a blues mind state. So we kind of, toy around with the idea of, oh, I've got the blues, and then, I feel better, and then so on and so forth. But to really look at the quality of our posture, of our composure, of our attitude, of our outlook, it's like this dark cloud has just come and it's never left. And it seems like more clouds come. And in the past 3 weeks or so, the past 19, 20 days, we've seen another major cloud arise with the Ukraine crisis, which has added to the complexity and the effect of this experience of not seeing the light of day, something known also as the experience of the blues. So when am I going to talk about mindfulness? I hope this is registering with you, because what I'm describing are the conditions that have not only affected us here in California and the United States, but this has been a global experience. So I can move forward now to adding a little more definition as to why I'm looking at this idea that Reverend Lien invited me to share from around skillful mindfulness. There's an author by the name of Ralph Ellison. He wrote a book called The Invisible Man. Very celebrated African-American author. But he had an observation about the conditions which create the blues. And he said this, he said that the blues, and if you can identify with this experience of what I'm presenting to you or inviting you to look at called the blues, he says that the blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of a brutal experience alive in one's aching consciousness, to finger its jagged grain and to transcend it, not by the consolation of philosophy, but by squeezing from the experience a near tragic, near comic lyricism. This is how Ralph Ellison defined this experience that I'm inviting you to observe that you've been co-participating in this past 3 years. He goes on to say that as a form itself, the blues, and this is more personal, but that the blues is an autobiographical chronicle of a personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. So if you can recall, or if you have any affinity towards the art form of the blues, or if you know anything about a life experience that has been described as blue, this is what you have been working with. It's not a surface level, fleeting type of thing. It's something that has roots, and it's offering us an opportunity with our mindful awareness practice and our meditation practice to observe it, to see what it's offering. we'll just pause for a moment. And I just want you to just think about your direct experience with suffering. And how our initial reaction to suffering has kind of like interwoven within it this narrative about victimization. And I think it's plausible. It's okay, because it's very personal. Suffering in its early stages and in its continuum, I would say, doesn't seem to really ever offer anything. It seems to only want to take and to deprive us, or to set some obstacle up that's trying to block us from finding a pathway of authentic, purposeful, meaningful expression. All I want to do, to be able to do, is whatever. But suffering has shown up. And it seems to extract from us the will to try, the will to overcome our direct living experience, those elements of our direct living experience. But if we can look at what Dr. Ellison was saying, I'm going to repeat what he said, and see for yourselves if this is, if his description, if in his description you can find a prescription to apply your mindfulness practice to. So he says again, the blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of a brutal experience alive. Right here is where we are addressing aversion, to run away from the painful details of a brutal experience. Dr. Ellison is saying the blues is trying to keep these painful details alive, to allow the continuum or the persistency of that experience, to allow it to stay, for us to coexist with it. Painful details of a brutal experience is something we even as mindfulness practitioners, we don't really want to hang out with that very long. And as far as I know, Dr. Ellison wasn't a Buddhist practitioner or anything like that, but he was something, because he was able to show us this aspect of the human condition, wherein the human condition is one where it is motivated by the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And Dr. Ellison is asking us, inviting us to look at the painful details with the intent and purpose of becoming familiar with it, to finger its jagged grain, to be present with the painful details, for the intent of transcending it, to transcend the presence and the direct experience of our personal catastrophe. I kind of liken this dynamic of fingering the jagged grain. Ray Charles came to mind and Stevie Wonder came to mind as two people who were very deeply gifted in their artistic expression, but they were deprived of natural sight. So fingering the jagged grain is almost as if I could replicate myself being a blind person with my eyes closed. And I would have to use my hands to familiarize myself with the face of suffering, to feel the contours of suffering, to really have the capacity to become deeply familiar with the quality of suffering so that I may transcend it. And he takes it a step further by saying that we transcend it not by logic or by philosophy, but by allowing ourselves to squeeze from this visitor called suffering or the blues, a near comic lyricism. Now, lyricism and expression, these things are kind of like language for people that sing or play instruments and whatnot. And I really want to widen the door for us, for our consideration tonight, because whatever your mode of expression is, whatever kind of suffering you are becoming acquainted with, whatever that is, within it, within the experience itself, is an opportunity to get the suffering is offering us something. And I know this may sound kind of like pie in the sky. It may sound really kind of like a very high reach. But what he's articulating is what we have seen, experienced, or demonstrated right here through citizens of our own country in before the 20th century, and in the South, where blues originated, through the African-American communities that saw brutal experiences, experienced brutality, and they couldn't escape it, so they had to become familiar with it. The conditions didn't allow for aversion to flourish. But in the wider context of things, the blues, or the experience of the blues, is not only relegated to African Americans, as we know. You yourselves have your own story to tell. But what is being offered is how this art form came to be. And it came to be by developing the ability to feel to finger the jagged grain of life's painful and brutal episodes. And to find within it the story, or what is known as our own autobiographical chronicle of our own personal catastrophes, and to allow the door to open for us to find the courage to find a means of meaning and expression from personal catastrophes, our own personal catastrophes. This, all I'm presenting is that this is a possibility, because this is where the blues and the art form of the blues came from people that did that probably without a Buddhist meditation practice. And all the stuff that we did. So transcendence is something that requires skillful mindfulness. There is the need for a willingness not to just use meditation as a means of repairing ourselves from the effects of suffering, but to cultivate the ability to coexist with it skillfully. Skillfully. We'll pause for a moment and just see if these words that are swirling around this Zoom platform are finding any sort of resonance. If you feel apprehension, or if you feel like, no, this isn't for me, I want to say that you don't have to even like the art form of the blues to experience the blues. This is not an invitation to venture off into something that you have no inclination towards. But it is showing us a template, a historical template of how people have been able to transcend suffering and to give it a new voice. And in these times of pandemic and flirting with the next world war or whatever they're trying to do, our nerves can be shattered. They could be under assault. Our attention can just be so, there's just so much distortion in society right now, so much noise. But we have the opportunity, because suffering is always showing up and the conditions of the blues have not let up, and it doesn't look like they will be letting up. So I just want to encourage us to look at our practice differently. Instead of like perhaps maintaining a certain status quo where it's like, I do this 20, 30 minutes, 60 minutes a day, 180 minutes a day or whatever, that's fine. But pay attention to what you're doing. Are you leaving, are you kind of there with your hands folded where you're not able to really feel the jagged grain of your personal catastrophes? Are we afraid? And so we just maintain our meditation practice like, like a turtle kind of goes into its shell. And, we're safe and we're holding space and we're doing all of that. But we have living examples of people that weren't afforded that luxury and who were able to really face what gave them the most trouble, and who found the courage to do something with their suffering. And our communities need this transformational license, this transformational agency. Our country needs this. But it doesn't come through status quo, and it doesn't come through not taking risks, and it doesn't come through mediocrity. I had this thought today, and I'm just going to share this in closing. And this might not even be directly attributed, but it's dealing with an element of what I have interpreted as suffering, which has been the experience of solitude. And not constant solitude, because I'm pretty active socially, but sometimes being in the socially active whirlpools of social activity, you could feel very alone there, right? But it's just the idea that I was able to observe myself wishing for acknowledgement from the outside, or love from the outside, or compassion to come, like the wind blows and, oh, so-and-so loves me. So, this is a form of suffering, of feeling like a sense of deprivation. And I was like, wait a minute. Why am I waiting on these elements to come from outside when I have the tools to generate them from within? It doesn't mean that I can't be receptive to love coming from the outside, but it's undependable. I'm just talking about one little element of my own direct experience today with a type of personal catastrophe. But I had the light came on when I was like, wait a minute, maybe there's a pathway where I can really look at the practices of karuna and metta in a way that really benefits me. Love doesn't need an invitation, and love is not like me, and love has never, ever, ever abandoned anyone because it's not like us. I'm kind of reaching a little bit right now, and I probably have to explain that a little bit. But love is not like us. Love transcends our experience. And because we're having blues or a pandemic or a war, love doesn't run away because it's scared. Love doesn't require me to maintain any level of superficiality. Love sees right through my practice and the lack thereof. Love loves without condition. You talk about the unconditioned, which is what we as practitioners are for the most part, are aspiring towards in our practice, the unconditioned. Love is unconditional. And I realized today that I have access to this, to as much of that as I want. I just have to refamiliarize myself with it and be open to it. And what's going to come out of the other side of that is a tragic near comic lyricism. There will be a story to tell. And this is what the creative, authentic, expressive side of the blues is that fingering the jagged grain of a personal catastrophe gives us a story to tell. You don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be a dancer. You don't have to be an artist, but you can have a story to tell about these times one day. And I think we already have a story to tell that we're formulating. So I think I will pause here. I will pause here and just reiterate one more time that the blues is an autobiographical, which it means it's very personal, chronicle of your own personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. And all of us qualify. We all qualify to engage in that process of alchemizing our personal catastrophes. They are not without purpose. They are not without merit. So I just want to encourage you to consider these things, and the underlying principle of where I am usually coming from in this role and identity as a teacher is to offer things that give people the ability to defy the prevailing conditions of these times. This is a gift that the pandemic brought to me, from seeing how people were showing up with their suffering. We're going to practice with the intent of defying the prevailing conditions of these times. So for real this time, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you for your time and attention.